Imagine a year where summer just never showed up. A year of bitter cold in June, snow in July, and a creepy, lingering twilight that blotted out the sun. For millions of people around the world in 1816, this wasn't a work of fiction, it was their reality. It was a time of devastating crop failures, famine, and riots. A year so grim it was nicknamed 1800 and froze to death. This wasn't some random fluke of nature. The cause was a single, earth-shattering event on the other side of the planet. It was an eruption so powerful it would rewrite history and plunge the world into a volcanic winter. This is the story of Mount Tambora, the biggest and deadliest volcanic eruption in recorded history. Section 1. The Ominous Prelude. Let's go back to the Dutch East Indies, to the island of Sumbawa, where one of the tallest peaks in the entire Indonesian archipelago used to stand. Before 1815, Mount Tambora was a majestic 4,300-meter giant, that's about 14,000 feet, a seemingly sleeping stratovolcano overlooking a peaceful island. For centuries, it had been quiet, letting civilizations grow and thrive right in its shadow. Meanwhile, the rest of the world was in turmoil. The Napoleonic Wars were reaching their chaotic end, and the Industrial Revolution was starting to change life as people knew it. So it's safe to say nobody was paying much attention to a distant mountain on a remote island. They had no idea that deep underground, a chamber of unimaginable pressure was building, ticking like a geological time bomb. The volcano had been rumbling for a few years, but in early April 1815, things started to escalate fast, a dark preview of the chaos about to be unleashed.
Section 2. The Eruption Sequence. On April 5, 1815, the mountain woke up with a roar. A massive explosion shot a column of fire and ash miles into the sky. But that was just the volcano clearing its throat. For 5 terrifying days, it rumbled, a final warning before the main event. Then, on the evening of April 10th, the blast that would echo through history finally hit. It was an explosion of almost unbelievable violence. A colossal eruption column, a churning mix of superheated gas, rock, and ash, blasted 43 kilometers, or nearly 27 miles straight up into the stratosphere, punching through the layers of our atmosphere. The energy it released was staggering. The sound of the explosion was heard over 2,600 kilometers away, where British officials mistook it for distant cannon fire. For anyone closer, the world simply became a nightmare. Total darkness fell over a radius of hundreds of kilometers, a blackout that lasted for days. The volcano didn't just erupt, it blew itself apart, ejecting an estimated 100 cubic kilometers of pulverized rock and ash. That's enough material to bury the entire island of Manhattan under a 1.5 mile thick blanket of rock. This was a Volcanic Explosivity Index 7 event, the only one modern humans have ever witnessed. Section 3. The Immediate Aftermath. For the people living on Sumbawa and nearby islands, it was the apocalypse. The eruption unleashed pyroclastic flows, scorching, fast-moving avalanches of gas and volcanic debris. These white-hot waves of destruction tore down the mountainside at hurricane speeds, vaporizing everything in their path. Entire villages and even kingdoms were wiped off the map in an instant. The blast and the flows killed at least 10,000 people instantly. But it didn't stop there. As the pyroclastic flows slammed into the ocean, they spawned a series of tsunamis that battered the shores of nearby islands, washing away coastal towns. The sea itself was transformed, clogged for months by vast, floating rafts of pumice, some of them miles across. When the ash finally began to settle, it blanketed hundreds of thousands of square kilometers, smothering plants and poisoning the soil and water. The once mighty Mount Tambora was gone. In its place was a massive caldera, a gaping wound in the earth over 6 kilometers wide and about 700 meters deep. The mountain had lost nearly a third of its height, a decapitated giant that had spent its fury. Section 4. The Global Consequences. The Year Without a Summer. While the immediate horror unfolded in Indonesia, a quieter, more sinister disaster was just beginning to circle the globe. The finest ash particles and, crucially, massive amounts of sulfur dioxide from the eruption had been shot high into the stratosphere. Carried by high-altitude winds, this material spread around the planet, forming a thin veil that blocked sunlight from reaching the Earth's surface. The result was a dramatic and deadly period of global cooling. The year after the eruption, 1816, became known as the Year Without a Summer. In New England and eastern Canada, the weather turned bizarre. May brought hard frosts. In June, a major snowstorm hit New York and Maine. Lakes and rivers in Pennsylvania were reportedly still frozen in July. Across Europe, the weather was just as bad, cold, dark, and relentlessly wet. This led to catastrophic crop failures across the entire northern hemisphere. Famine was rampant. Grain prices shot up, sparking riots and social chaos in Britain, France, and Switzerland. In Ireland, the failed harvest triggered a typhus epidemic that killed tens of thousands. In China, the altered monsoons caused devastating floods, while in India, many believed the disruption helped a new, deadlier strain of cholera to emerge, which soon exploded into a global pandemic. All told, the famine and disease that followed the eruption claimed at least another 80,000 lives, bringing the total death toll to around 100,000 people.
Section 5. The Wider Impact and Legacy. The ripple effects of Tambora went beyond just climate and hunger, touching history and culture in some pretty weird ways. That wet, miserable summer of 1816 is thought to have contributed to the muddy, brutal conditions that bogged down Napoleon's forces at the Battle of Waterloo. But its most famous cultural legacy was born out of all that gloom. That same rainy summer, a group of English writers was stuck indoors while vacationing at the Villa Diodati by Lake Geneva. Trapped by the incessant rainfall and bleak skies, they decided to hold a contest to see who could write the best ghost story. One of the guests, an 18-year-old named Mary Shelley, had a waking nightmare about a scientist who creates life and is disgusted by his work. That vision became the basis for her novel, Frankenstein. Her companion, Lord Byron, was also inspired by the oppressive darkness, writing his apocalyptic poem, Darkness, which opens with the chilling line, "I had a dream, which was not all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished." The eruption even pushed innovation. The high price of oats for horses likely inspired German inventor Karl Dreis to create his Lauf machine, an early ancestor of the bicycle.
Section 6. Putting it all in perspective. When you think of a massive volcanic eruption, the name that usually pops into your head is Krakatoa. Its 1883 eruption was an absolute monster, a VEI-6 that produced the loudest sound ever recorded and triggered tsunamis that killed around 36,000 people. But when it comes to the sheer volume of stuff blown into the sky, it was just a fraction of Tambora. Krakatoa ejected around 20 cubic kilometers of rock. Tambora ejected up to 100, that's 5 times as much. On the logarithmic volcanic explosivity index, Tambora was a VEI-7, a full order of magnitude more powerful than Krakatoa's VEI-6. While Krakatoa's story spread like wildfire thanks to the new telegraph, Tambora's impact was more global and climatically devastating. It literally changed the world's weather. And as huge as Tambora was, it's a humbling reminder that our planet is capable of even more. Prehistoric supereruptions like Toba on Sumatra 74,000 years ago were hundreds of times larger, events that nearly pushed early humanity to extinction. The story of Tambora is an incredible and frankly terrifying reminder of the raw and unpredictable power of our planet. These are the kinds of stories we love to tell, exploring the forces that have shaped our world. If you found this journey back to 1815 as fascinating as we did, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the events that defined history.
Conclusion. From the terrifying initial blast to the silent, deadly chill that gripped the entire globe, the eruption of Mount Tambora was a planetary-scale disaster. It was a force of nature so great it collapsed a mountain, starved nations, and forever changed art and culture. Its legacy is written in the geological record, in historical accounts of suffering, and in the dark, imaginative pages of Frankenstein. The story of Tambora is a profound lesson. A single event on one side of the world can connect us all, and the ground beneath our feet holds a power we're still only beginning to understand.